Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the first episode of The Meta, a League of Legends podcast where we analyze picks and bans in professional play and talk a little bit about what we think is going to happen in the future. If you're watching this on YouTube, you have the benefit of some data visualizations in front of you that are going to help tell the story of the meta. If you are a listener and not watching on YouTube, then I will be telling you exactly what's happening on the screen. I will state the statistic for you, so there's no need to feel pressure to watch. You just want to listen to this in the background, that's what it's made for. My name is Travis Stonefeldbarris, but my friends call me Stony or Stone. So let's jump straight into what we saw in week one of competitive play. When I say week one, the weeks I'm talking about are LCS weeks. Obviously, each region has their own start time, their own format, which are diverse at this point, but we are going to cater to the NA viewer and talk about the NA meta and how it's different in other regions. Because what we know about the meta is that every time a Western team gets to the world stage, they need to figure out the meta. And this happened last year in Worlds 2020. Team Liquid and Broxa and even G2 Esports from Europe talked a lot about when they got there that they had some catching up to do. They didn't understand the carry jungle meta. They didn't understand level 1s very well. And so in scrims, that's where they were practicing. And we sort of saw it come to fruition when, Fnatic got reverse swept and G2 got knocked out, even though they were sort of a favorite, not really a favorite going in. They weren't performing that well, but it was just very clear that Western teams did not have a good grasp on the meta and exactly how to play it. So let's move directly into the data. This podcast is going to be very analytical, just so everybody knows. I'm a data analyst by training, and that's how I prefer to analyze these things, or with numbers and comparing regions and comparing champions. So what I have in front of me currently is a list or a visualization that has all of the champions that were picked in week one. The size of these squares correlates to the number of times they were picked. So for those of you listening, the top champion picked this week was Kai'Sa, picked 88 times with a 58% win rate. So the color on this chart corresponds to the quartile or the win rate. So, for instance, Taliyah has the highest win rate of any champion that was picked, more than 10 times, at 76%, which is why it's the darkest color. So it's over 75%, so it goes into that dark color, the dark blue here. This is the next tick down is 50%. So this is below a 50% win rate. This is above. Initially, we're going to focus on the 2, 4, 6, 8 champions that were picked the most, and we're going to look at which region they were picked in. The 8 champions that were picked the most are in this order: Kai'Sa, Graves, Leona, Orianna, Olaf, Jhin, Alistar, and Renekton. And this is not bans, this is not presence, this is this up here is the pick rate, and then this is the presence down here. So the bottom chart measures how often they were picked or banned by region. And the most prominent one for those of you at home is Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa was just the number one picked, number one banned champion. I think teams have figured out that Kai'Sa is busted. And I don't necessarily think Kai'Sa is busted. I think Kai'Sa is just one of the few ADCs in the meta right now that has a really, really good curve. And when I say curve, for those of you that play like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or card games like this, you understand what a curve is. You get 1 mana or 1 resource every turn. You get an extra resource. And so on turn 1, you want to use 1 mana. On turn 2, use 2 mana. On turn 3, use 3 mana. You're not leaving anything up. And so what I mean in a curve for a champion in League of Legends is that Kai'Sa doesn't really have a time when she goes from being useless to useful. She's just kind of useful at all stages of the game. And eventually she does become this late game monster that does a lot of damage after she starts getting her evolutions off, starts to get a few items, and yeah, she can do a lot of damage. She can be mobile, so you don't have to peel for her. You kind of don't have to worry about the Kai'Sa player. As long as they're good at the champion and they position well, they kind of have Their ultimate is this oh shit button. Okay, I need to get out of here, so I'm going to reposition and dive with my team to the other side of the fight. And I think that's why we see Kai'Sa being played so much. Coming into this tournament during the preseason, coming into the season, the preseason, a lot of people were suspecting that MF and Jhin were going to be the two sort of broken ADCs. And as people were saying that, I kept saying, yeah, I think Kai'Sa will fit into the meta eventually. We just have to figure out how to build her. So over here on the right side of the screen, I have the Game of Legends Esports. It's just a website with a lot of statistics for professional play. And we can look at what Kai'Sa is building. We see that people have just noted that Gale Force into Collector is just a really, really good curve for ADCs right now. Gives you a lot of mobility, and it gives you basically means that you have to do like 5% less damage because the Collector is going to just collect them. For those of you that don't know, the Collector is a new item in Season 11 that offers 55 attack damage, 20% critical strike, 12 lethality, and has a unique called Death and Taxes, which reads, if you deal post-mitigated damage that would leave a champion below 5% of their maximum health, execute them. Champion kills grant you an additional 25 gold. 25 gold is sort of not really important, but what is important is if the enemy team is playing a bunch of tanks or people that are going to build health, or just as the game goes on, this 5% of their maximum health is just easier and easier to reach. When you pair the Collector with Gale Force, which has attack speed, critical strike, attack damage, the numbers don't really matter. It's not very interesting to read the numbers, but the unique Cloudburst dash is the important part here. So you dash to target location. You can't go through terrain when you're using Gale Force, but you fire 3 homing missiles at the most wounded enemy within the 750 radius at the end of the dash, prioritizing enemy champions. Each missile deals 60 to 105 based on level plus 15% bonus AD magic damage, which increases based on the target's missing health. So when somebody gets down to about 20% of their health, you can probably dash at them and safely proc Death and Taxes from the Collector. So really what's happening here is that ADCs, we know that people have complained that ADCs, oh, they got their crit items removed and da-da-da, but when you take these new resources into account, you can see that if there's an enemy champion standing or trying to kill Kai'Sa or Jhin or MF, and they have this Gale Force item, or even Lucian, and they have this Gale Force item, if they're about 20% of their health, I'm probably going to one-shot them, right? I actually did this as Kai'Sa in a game today. I was playing against a Kassadin who was rather fed, and I was not that fed, and this Kassadin decided that he was going to dive me in every single fight. And the moment he used his first proc of his ultimate on me, I just dumped my entire load onto him. I have to edit that out. I just dumped my entire kit, face rolled the keyboard. And so I'm Kai'Sa, so I would W him and Q, get my Q off, and then as I watched his health bar go down after a couple of auto attacks, I just procced my Gale Force at him, and boom, he was dead. All right, so think about that. Kai'Sa is just 1v1ing a fed Kassadin, right? Like, that means that ADCs, I think this season can be rather safe. All right, going back to the tables in front of us that I worked really hard on, so I'm going to be very proud of them. We can analyze how often these top 8 champions were picked in every region. We started with Kai'Sa because Kai'Sa has a 92%, a 90%, and a 90% respectively for the LPL, LCS, and LCK, which are the 3 regions I'm focusing on now. LEC hasn't started yet. I'm going to throw that one into the mix. If you are not in one of these regions and like why you're not looking at, Brazil, Latin America, or Oceania or anything like this, I'm sorry. It's just too much information for me to take in. I can eventually look at those if I want to. And maybe as we get closer to Worlds and I have some more time on my hands, we can go for that. But right now, we're just going to look at these three. Today, at least, we're going to look at these three. The next sort of like most present champion between all regions is Olaf. Olaf is very strong right now, if you don't know, because of the item Gore Drinker. Gore Drinker is a 3300 item that gives you ability haste, 45 attack damage, 400 health, 150% base health regeneration. But again, once again, with these new items, the unique active abilities on them are what's really making them broken and present in the meta. So you deal 100% of your AD as physical damage to enemies in a 400 unit radius around you. So you're hitting in a circle. It's a big flail thing. So you just kind of, the animation is a flail if you haven't played with it. And you heal for 25% of your AD plus 12% of your missing health. So you can really see how champions like Set, Olaf, champions that want to get really low and then heal up a little bit. Riven is even really good with this item. Fiora is very good with this item if you're looking to play it in solo queue. But Olaf just walks into your team, starts running down. As he gets lower on health, he gets more attack speed. And then just as he's about to die, he's just going to reset this entire health bar. It also procs off of each enemy. So you're getting 25% of your AD plus 12% of your missing health for each enemy champion hit. So depending on how much AD you have, right, if you hit 4 or 5 champions, you're probably just going to reset your total health bar. Tricky thing with Olaf, or the impression that I have for Olaf, is I'm worried about this 48% win rate. In North America, Olaf was like perma-banned, and the 2 times, let's see if I click Olaf here, it's going to pull him up, hopefully. There we go. So if we look at North America, NA, 2 times, yeah, 100% win rate. Olaf, North America, was banned pretty much every game. The 2 times this week that he got through, in North America, he smashed. If we compare that to the LPL in China, Olaf was picked 25 times, or has been picked 25 times to date, and only has a 40% win rate. So maybe I should make a video about why is Olaf so good in North America and not so great? What are these Chinese players doing to beat Olaf? I think would be some good content. All right, what else? Keep looking at this. Again, we're looking at the presence of champions by region. Alistar is another one that comes up as picked quite often. Graves, both, and Renekton. Jhin is actually pretty low presence, but has a good win rate. So that's kind of interesting. So Jhin wasn't banned very much, but I think he was picked a lot. I think that's what's going on here. Let's look at Alistar for a minute. Alistar is really good. I think tank supports are just good right now, or at least that's how people perceive it to be. Engage supports are really good. You're roaming a lot. So I think that's why Alistar is up here. Leona's up here as well for the same reason. Really nothing to report besides Leona. Leona does not have a great win rate in North America and has a really good win rate in China. And is just not picked in LCK. That's the point I wanted to get at with Leona. That she's just not picked in the LCK. And I think in this podcast, what we're going to run into a lot is champions just not being picked because people don't want to fucking play it. They don't care, right? And I think that might be the case. I think Leona might have been good for so long that a lot of support players are just like, ugh, you're going to make me play Leona again. I think it's kind of like Shen and Ornn for top laners in North America. Like I remember watching I was watching the LCS in-houses and Darshan was playing and I Will Dominate was streaming it and he was like, coaching the teams and talking about pick bans. He's like, well, do we want to pick Ornn? Do we want to pick Shen? And Darshan was just like, I don't want to play either of those champions. I don't want to play them. And they ended up picking like Aurelia or something. They won the game, but it was just funny to hear like I'm not playing Shen, I'm not playing Ornn. Sorry. So yeah, that's the sort of analysis of the top 8 champions. I think also worth noting are these next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 champions. So we looked at the top 8. The next 5 are Gnar, Galio, Zoe, Nidalee, and Syndra. Gnar is an interesting one, and I'm definitely going to make a video on why Gnar is good, because if you watched the LCS this weekend, or if you followed it on Twitter, you would see that hashtag NANAR was, I don't think it was trending, but it was just kind of funny to watch because people were like, Gnar is so boring, Gnar is so useless, why are teams picking Gnar? Looking at the LCS. And so I dove into why Gnar is good in other regions. And if you look down here at this graph, we see that the presence of Gnar in the LCK was 80%. And the other 2 regions only had it at 47%. So Gnar is being picked and heavily prioritized in the LCK. Analysis showed that Gnar is a good counter to Renekton, which we know is one of the highest picked champions, highest prioritized champions. And Gnar is a counter. It's not a hard counter, kind of like Quinn is, right? So you pick Quinn into Renekton top lane, you have the range advantage, he dashes at you, you have your backflip ability to dash away. You can kind of stay safe from him all the time. Gnar is sort of similar, that he dashes at you, you jump away, but just doesn't build enough straight AD to ever really chase down the Renekton. The Renekton can kind of always disengage whenever he wants. And I noticed that when LCK players were picking Gnar, the jungler and the mid laner were prioritizing the top side of the map, and particularly the first Rift Herald. And so what's happening is that I think that around 8 minutes, 9 minutes into the game, Gnar is just sort of the most useful champion on the map. And so they're prioritizing going up there and helping the Gnar get ahead by taking the Rift Herald or diving the top laner or taking plays or something like that. That way Gnar comes back to lane with an item advantage and can just never get... Because there is a point in that lane where if you're in mini Gnar form and Renekton has good positioning, it gets a flash on you and has some cooldown reduction, and has some AD, you're probably just dead. And particularly if he gets help from the jungler, like Gnar is a counter, but Gnar is not going to... like if you get Pantheon stunned into Renekton stunned, or if you get... Renekton stunned into Taliyah shove, or whatever that her rock pop is. We'll just call it rock pop because that's a better name. You're just dead, and then Renekton is going to win on the side lane for the rest of the game because you can't control when you become Mega Gnar. So we've talked a little bit about the presence. We're looking at all of the champions here. The only other thing to point out on this is that Taliyah is really prioritized in the LCK and not so much in the LPL. Again, I might make a video on this, on why this is a thing, so I can show, make some YouTube content where you can watch and see exactly what teams are doing. But when I dove into why people weren't picking Taliyah as much in the LPL, or Taliyah, or however this name is pronounced, it's because Pantheon jungle is a really high priority, and it's something that's getting through pick ban a lot in the LPL. And if you play Taliyah at all, you know that Pantheon pretty much hard counter shits on Taliyah. He's going to stun you. You're going to miss your pop. He's going to jump at you. It's just not going to work out, and he's going to kill you. Why Taliyah all of a sudden has so much of a presence? I still have a little bit of research to do on this, but my instincts are telling me that it has to do with the item changes, specifically the fact that you don't have to build a jungle item anymore. The AP jungle item was sort of shit last season, in my opinion. Like, Gragas sort of built it, Evelynn built it, but didn't really become useful until she had like 3 items anyway. So now that every jungler can just, like, every AP jungler can just rush, like, Sork Boots and a Mythic and not have to worry about getting a jungle item, I think that Taliyah is really good for that reason. She's got a lot of mobility. She's going to clear camps fast, like, and then she doesn't have to stop for any nonsense as far as jungle items are concerned, and so I think that she's going to continue to be good. So we'll see. We've talked a lot about a lot about these champions, though, all of them. So we're going to move on and go to the top lane. Today we're just going to talk about the champions that are picked in lanes and why. So we talked about all the champions, why they're picked. And now we're going to talk about why champions are picked in a lane. Starting with the top lane. The number one most picked champion in the top lane was Renekton with a 63% win rate. Gnar with a 52% win rate. Camille with a 53% win rate. Aatrox 44%. Ornn 33%. And then from there we have Jace, Gragas, Kennen. Volibear was up there, probably worth talking about. So let's start with Renekton. If you play League of Legends, you probably know that Renekton's whole shtick is dashing in, stunning somebody, getting chunks to kind of low health, and then pushing Q with the ferocity stacks to sort of heal back up. Renekton is good because Goredrinker basically gives you a second proc of your Q. So now you can dash in, stun someone, you use your Q to heal back up a little bit, and then if you get low again, you just use the Goredrinker, and then by that time, your Q is off cooldown. It's sort of the cycle repeats if you play the fight well. You just kind of have a lot of healing, and you're never going to die. So let's look at what Renektons are building. There you go. 98% of the items bought for Renekton include Goredrinker, and then into Asterix Gauge. 20% of the time people are building Blade of the Ruined King, so just more healing. I don't know about this. I don't know about building Blade. I think Sterix is just good. Get the more maximum health, get more AD, which means that your Goredrinker is going to heal you for more. You don't need to, unless the enemy team has picked like a heavy, they pick like Tryndamere. And they're like, yeah, we're planning on split pushing because you're going to be the one that matches the Tryndamere if you're Renekton. Then you build probably Blade of the Ruined King, but I can't really see a world in the current meta. Dragons and team fights are just so important that I just don't see a world where going Blade of the Ruined King second is always the right call. Maybe in these 20% of the cases it was the right call. And we see a really good win percentage on this champion. It's just insane. 63% in China, 55% in Korea, or 55% in NA, 71% in Korea. They've been playing this since season 10, like both of these regions, NA. There are some skeptics of Renekton, right? You think of LS, Glass Shadow saying that Renekton, why would you pick a champion? His take on it is, why would you pick a champion that has to get ahead early? And I think that with the Goredrinker, you don't really have to get ahead early. You can just have Ultimate and Goredrinker in a team fight with 0 kills, 0 deaths, and be useful. So let's compare some of the top lane champions here. Renekton, Gnar, Camille, Aatrox, and Ornn. Renekton picked the most out of any of them. When we look at the creep score CS difference at 15 minutes into the game, I think we get a little bit of a picture into why I think Ornn, top lane, is a bait. I don't think it's good right now. I think that there might be some finagling and some things you could do as far as item purchases that make it good. But right now, over all of the games, Ornn has minus 19 average CS difference at 15. He's just down 20 CS basically every game. And a lot of times it's into a Renekton. I think the reason this is that, remember how I was talking about Kai'Sa had a good curve, meaning that she was just kind of always useful. The item changes for tanks make it so they don't have a good curve anymore. You used to be able to either, you could buy health, armor, or magic resist effectively, and you just stacked early game, whichever one was the most necessary. And by that, I mean, if you're a top laner building tank, if you're playing Ornn, for instance, you're going to build Balmy Cinder first if the enemy has a top laner and a jungler with different damage ratios. So if they have like Nidalee Gangplank, then you're going to build health first because building a defensive stat doesn't really help you that much. However, if the opposite is true, if they have like Gangplank Pantheon, then you're going to build armor first. Now you don't really have that choice. You get to this point in the game where you go back and you're buying an item and you're ahead. And I've played this and I've been in this situation. And because you're trying to finish your Sunfire Cape, you're against like Renekton and you have to build Magic Resist. And it just sucks because you don't want to build Magic Resist right there. You're going to be laning for another like 5 minutes and it's a Renekton and they might have like Pantheon jungle and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to build MR now? Like, I don't want to do this. So I just don't think that curve into the team fight is good enough for Ornn. However, I'm not sure, and I need to do a little bit of research. I think with the item changes, Ornn can build an offensive item and it will still upgrade for him. Because I think he can upgrade all mythics now. So what if Ornn just builds like Gore Drinker or some nonsense? Is there something out there that he can build that will upgrade that doesn't have to be? And then you build full tank after that, or Trinity Force, or I don't know. It might be trolling, but it's something I'm definitely going to try. So if you're in my solo queue game or in my normal game when I try it and it fails, I apologize. Renekton, Gnar with 52% win rate. Gnar is the counter to Renekton. And I talked a little bit about why I think Gnar is good in other regions and is bad in NA. I think we're just playing it wrong in NA. And I think they need to get their shit together and figure it out, frankly. I am not a fan of how NA plays League of Legends. I'm a fan of NA. I like the players. I like the people. It's my region, right? I just think that we're trolling a bit. And I think this Gnar pick is just us trolling. It's getting no support from the junglers in NA. It's left on an island with a Renekton. And again, Renekton gets to this point in the game where he finishes a Gore Drinker and he dashes through some minions, stuns mini Gnar. Q, Gore Drinker, active. You're just dead. Like you just don't have the health. You don't have the defensive stats if you're not Mega Gnar to beat Renekton in that case. All right, move on. Let's move on to Camille, because with these three champions, Gnar, Renekton, and Camille, you have sort of a rock, paper, scissors, where Gnar, if played correctly, beats Renekton. Renekton, if played correctly, beats Camille. And Camille, if played correctly, beats Gnar. So it's this sort of like rock, paper, scissors of the top lane of what are you going to play. I saw a few people picking Gnar. If we go look at Gnar, they're picking Gnar into Camille, right? So on my screen, I'm looking at the past results of Gnar, and I see 1, 2, maybe just 2 Camilles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 out of 100 games in the world. Professional games in the world, anyway. We're picking Gnar into Camille. I don't know about that. I'm going to be honest. I think that I just don't think you should do it. I think that the Gnar in these situations where the enemy team has a Camille, they have a counter pick, Gnar is sort of just not doing what Gnar needs to do. And you would almost just rather have like Ornn there, or a different tank, or like a Sion, or something like this, or even a Gragas. So yeah, I don't know that you should pick Gnar into Camille. And I don't know what the logic is for doing it. I haven't seen it pop off. I haven't seen it be extremely successful. Maybe they just need to... Maybe it's just what they've practiced or something like this. And I think the meta can shape based on like, oh, we didn't really practice Sion, so I'm not going to pick it. So I'll just pick Gnar here because we need an engaged tank. And there's nothing really to pick into Camille. So I wonder if there's other things we can pick into Camille. But we'll have to see. I think that's something to watch. I think the top lane meta, this rock, paper, scissors, Renekton, Camille, Gnar is something to sort of keep our eye on. The next two champions, Ornn, Aatrox, you'll note that they both have below a 50% win rate, and Ornn only has a 33% win rate in professional play, or in these three regions at least. I think that these two champions could be bait. I don't think they're great. I don't think Aatrox has a good curve. Team fighting in the current meta is just so important. I cannot stress enough that you have to be down to tussle at any point in the game. because with the way the meta is shaping up, teams are developing a range of strategies where if they have Gnar top, they'll send 5 people top to get the first. It's 8 minutes into the game. They have a Gnar up there, and they're sending 5 people to get the first Rift Herald, and they're just sacking waves and plates bottom. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They're just doing it. So yeah, I don't know that Aatrox can tussle at any point in the game like some of these other champions, and I think Ornn's the same way. Ornn needs some tank items, needs to scale a little bit before he can tussle, because if 5 people are shooting an Ornn at 8 minutes into the game, he's DED dead. It's done. It's just, there's nothing you can do about that, right? To where Camille can get in and out. Gnar has, a lot of tank stats, can get in and out. Renekton can get in and out, right? You have to be ready to tussle at any point in the game. Jace is up there with a decent win rate. I think Jace we could see more of, because I do think Jace is one of these champions that I'm down to tussle. Let's go. I have a lot of tools that I can use in any team fight. And particularly as a response to Gnar. I think that this is a good response to Gnar as well. If they're banning Camille, you can pick Jace. Okay. That does it for the top lane. Let's move on to the jungle. My opinion, Taliyah is queen of the jungle in the meta right now. That's just how I see it. I think the tier list is probably Taliyah, Pantheon. Taliyah, Pantheon, Olaf up there. Although the win rate on Olaf is not too impressive. The win rate on Taliyah is just insane. 76% in competitive play. I'm sure it's something that Riot is taking a look at. I think we'll wait and see what develops over the weeks if teams find answers to it. Again, it's not picked in LPL often, and I think that they may just have developed an answer to it. I think Pantheon is the answer to it. Particularly because he can also match the global, right? So if you see a wall going up in the top lane, you can actually just Pantheon ult up there, and you also counter Taliyah when she gets there, which is nice. I think Olaf is good. I think teams are very good at team fighting, and they're building compositions right now that are for team fighting. So Olaf was picked 52 times with a 48% win rate. And I think that the way you beat an Olaf is you put him behind early in the jungle, and then you just kind of kite him. So like, okay, we can't CC him, so we just got to kind of kite him. I just think that professional players are a little too good at that. If the meta ever shifts to a place where we're looking for kills in the mid lane, right now, mid laners, we'll get to it in a second, but mid laners are just kind of picking safe champions with range. But I could see Olaf being very good in the mid jungle. If mid jungle 2v2 ever becomes really, really high priority, I think that Olaf is going to be really good. I think that jumping into a mid laner that has CC and being able to shrug it off is nice. I think that the slow is really good. I think that he can dive pretty easily. So I think we'll watch Olaf, and we'll try to track it next week and see what happens. However, Graves and Nidalee, Graves and Nidalee I think are bait for professional players. Let's look at what Graves can do. Pull up the website here. Graves right now has picked 62 times with a 37% win rate in the jungle. Yeah. So Korea and North America have decent win rates. China does not. Whoa. China does not. 21%. And remember that Chinese junglers are the ones that really set the tone for the meta last year, and they were the ones picking Graves. And now apparently they figured out how to shit on it, because it only has a 21% win rate. So I don't think Graves is good anymore. The reason I don't think Graves is good anymore, I think both Graves and Nidalee, people are forgetting the fact that you no longer have to buy a jungle item. These are two champions that were good with the jungle item they had, and they were much, much better once they got their second item. But the fact that we're not building jungle items anymore means that your opponent jungler, their first item spike comes so much sooner, which means that you have a way, you have less time to impact the map. If I think about the World's meta when Graves was really, really good, I think about the early invades. I think about taking Raptor Camp at level 2, or when the Raptors are level 2, and just never letting the enemy jungler build items. But that curve just doesn't, that amount of time just isn't there anymore. You know, if you don't push them out of their jungle completely, then they're still going to get their item. They're not going to have to build a jungle item. And so eventually you're going to turn a corner into a Pantheon, and he's just going to one-shot you because he's going to have his mythic item complete. And yeah, you kept him down for the first 9-10 minutes of the game, but now he's got his mythic item and he's just going to one-shot you and it's over. So yeah, I think that's how that's going to go. Particularly when it comes to the NA side of things, I think that these two champions are just absolute bait. C9 tweeted out after the first week, like, ooh, the best League of Legends in the world is being played in North America right now. And I just giggled. I feel like NA just learned how to play the World's meta. And the rest of the world is moving on. And North America is just like, hey, we figured out how to play Graves in Italy. And it's like, look, folks, you're still behind. Right? Like, if you look at, so I'll look at the win rate for both Graves and Nidalee by region. North America for Nidalee, 66% win rate. China, 60% win rate. Korea, 26% win rate. Graves will see the same pattern. I can almost guarantee it. NA, 44% win rate. Korea, 50% win rate. China, 21% win rate. So these Chinese junglers, they're the ones to watch. They've got this shit figured out. They know how to beat Graves and Nidalee now. So if you want to know how to beat Graves and you want to know how to beat Nidalee, go watch them. And I just don't think that North America has quite figured that out yet. But these champions can be beaten to where before they couldn't, right? And in the World's meta, they just couldn't be beaten. Okay, that's enough for the jungle. I am rambling a bit too much, so we're going to move on to the mid lane. Mid lane, my analysis of the mid lane is simply that it needs a change. I think that in League of Legends, when a particular lane and all the professional players in that particular lane are willing to make a handshake, and by handshake, I mean, okay, you pick that champion, I'll pick this champion, and we'll just, you know, every single game we're going to leave them both up, and every single game they're going to get picked, that it's a problem. And right now, that's what's happening with Orianna, who was picked 54 times with a 62% win rate, and Syndra, who's picked 38 times with a 55% win rate. I think that if this is the case, if these two champions are going to be played this much, if we compare that to everybody else, right? Like Orianna and Syndra, I think that Zoe is good. More people need to pick up on Zoe. I think Victor is okay. I just think that maybe Orianna and Syndra need a little bit of their safety taken away, or just maybe a little bit of a change so that this handshake for Orianna for Syndra just doesn't work as well. So yeah, that's sort of the analysis. Honestly, the mid lane is boring. Yone is the most exciting champion to play in the mid lane, to watch in the mid lane, but sometimes he just gets shit on. Galio is another notable meta choice in the mid lane. I think NA has proven that it's pretty good. In other regions, you really, really need to pair it with Camille. The idea being, for those of you that don't know, Camille uses her ultimate on a carry, the ADC usually. And then right as she does that, Galio channels his ultimate, and that person, whomever Camille used her ultimate on, is now trapped. They can't get away. They're guaranteed the Galio ultimate is going to hit, and if that Galio ultimate hits there, it's also guaranteed that he's going to get the taunt off. So that's why you see the Camille-Galio pairing so often. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, though. I think that there's not a ton. The only other thing to really look at is Twisted Fate was meta last season, and right now his creep score difference at 15 minutes is -9. So I don't know. We'll see if Twisted Fate stays in the meta. I think it's good in certain compositions where you need that point click CC, but we'll see. Yeah, skipping right over mid lane, we're going to move to support. Some things are pretty interesting at the support. We have two. I mean, the idea of support right now is tanks. You look at all of these champions. The top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The top 10 supports being played right now are straight up just tanks. That's where your engage is coming from. There's not a lot of Morgana. There's not a lot of Lux. There's like 5 Rakan games, 5 Seraphine games, 2 Morgana, 2 Bard, 2 Lulu. The question is who is the best tank in whenever you're drafting. I think that's the question you need to be asking yourself. Leona wasn't picked very much in LCK. We'll pull up the statistics here. But has a great win rate in China, 61%, 50% even in Korea. Terrible in NA for some reason, 28%. Maybe just people not understanding the power spikes of the champion. Alistar is interesting. I think the biggest question for the meta for support is where does Rel fit in? Rel at this time has been picked 13 times with a 31% win rate. It's another question I want to answer and go look at. I know that part of the issue with Rel is that if you pick Rel and the enemy picks Alistar, a lot of what you want to accomplish is sort of nullified. I think Alistar just straight counters Rel. Because you go to jump in with your, I don't know what ability is on Rel. I need to play the champion a little bit more. But you go to jump in and Alistar can actually ground pound, pulverize to interrupt the dash. And then all of your CC is bunk and you're slow anyway, even though you didn't get the stun off, you didn't get anything. So it's just really, really bad time. Galio support has been picked 27 times with a 44% win rate. I think that's another sort of sleeper pick that all of the teams are going to have to figure out. I think every support player in professional play needs to learn how to play Galio. I think Maokai and Gragas fall into that same category. Maokai was picked 16 times with a 63% win rate. Gragas was picked 14 times with a 66% win rate. And I think that both of these champions, because of the item changes at support, can be very good. For those of you that don't know, Imperial Mandate on Maokai is awesome. It's very broken. If you feel like doing a bunch of damage as Maokai, go for it. I think it was picked once in NA this week. Twice with a 100% win rate. And there was a tweet by, I think it was Freak, posted that the Maokai actually did more damage per minute than the ADC, just because Imperial Mandate is broken. Okay. Yeah, again, support is just there's not a lot to talk about. A lot of my friends say, Travis, when you do your analysis videos, you're biased toward the top lane. I counter that argument by saying that there's just much more to analyze in the top lane. Your champion pools for top have to be much deeper. In fact, your champion pools for solo lanes have to be much deeper. For bottom, the meta sort of presents itself, and it's just kind of there, and it's just who can play it better, and stuff like that. So, and jungle's the same way. I just think that the diversity in those champion pools is just a little bit more than the bottom lane, which I think is a problem. I don't think that's it's not supposed to be a dig at bottom lane or anything, or even support. I think that Riot really needs to focus on building marksmen and bottom laners that bring something unique to the team, and I think that their past couple have done that. I think that Aphelios brings something unique to the team, and I think that Samira brings something unique, like a unique plan. Samira wants to get in, dash around, get a bunch of AoE damage off, And so that fits into a certain comp. I think Kai'Sa and Xayah are kind of the same way. They're starting to develop these champions that bring something unique to their team. And you want them in certain comps, but not in others. Speaking of the bottom lane, it's what we will look at next. The top, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's look at the top 6 because they are the biggest on this graphic. So we have Kai'Sa, Jhin, Samira, Miss Fortune, Xayah, and Aphelios. Miss Fortune and Jhin were the two that preseason a lot of the ADCs were rambling about. Well, because, and they were saying, well, because, you know, Riot nerfed critical strike and critical strike chance. They sort of nerfed that with the new items. Got rid of a lot of the items that used it really well. They assumed the ADCs or bottom laners were going to be forced to pick marksmen that relied more on like abilities. So, you know, Miss Fortune and Jhin have really, really crucial ultimates, really, really powerful ultimates that can change the course of a game. And so most people are like, these are the two champions we have to play. Everything else is crap. Don't worry about it. Samira came out, and people thought, and when on release, Samira was broken. And then Riot, I think, has done a good job at balancing Samira, where if you do what Samira wants to do, get in, get a lot of damage off, do some cool things, move around, dash around a lot, then you're rewarded. But I think the two that really people didn't see coming were Kai'Sa and Aphelios. Because these are two champions that they're a sort of auto attack based, and they assumed that, you know, oh, there's no crit chance, maybe. And I always thought that Kai'Sa was going to be good once we figured out the build. Aphelios did surprise me. But I think that what's happening is if we click on Aphelios and we look at the different regions, NA has a really good win rate on Aphelios, and then Korea and China are sort of mid-range. I just think that he's solid. He has a solid curve. He can be useful, and then he scales. I think he's better than Jhin. I think Jhin late game is really hard to play because his animations are kind of long, and you have to reload. And so I think Jhin is kind of hard to play in the current meta, and I think Aphelios is a little bit easier. Well, thank you for listening. I'm going to wrap it up here. This is the first episode, and I fear that I'm going to ramble a little too much to hold your attention. I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If there's other statistics or things that you want me to look into on this podcast, please let me know in the comments below, or you can tweet me at Stonefeld on Twitter. If you have any ideas on or picks that you think are going to come up in the meta, I think that's something that's very fun to do in this type of podcast. What's going to be good? How are people going to counter it? And comment with that as well. I love having these conversations. And thank you again for listening. Have a great rest of your day or evening or morning or whatever it is, wherever you are.